All right, today we're going to dive deep into a really fascinating review from Nature Reviews Neuroscience. It's all about a new way of looking at pathological anxiety. We're going to move past just talking about symptoms and start exploring the specific brain circuits that go haywire. So let's get right into it.
Here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by looking at just how big of a problem anxiety is worldwide. Then, we'll cover the massive shift happening in how we diagnose it. From there, we'll zoom in on the brain's negative valence system and its three main threat circuits. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the most important take-home messages from this research.
So first, let's set the stage. Anxiety isn't just a fleeting feeling, you know? It's actually one of the biggest and most pervasive health challenges that we're facing on a global scale.
And the scale? It's just staggering. We're talking about over 300 million people around the world dealing with anxiety disorders. And get this, that's not even the full story. The number of cases shot up by a shocking 25% after the COVID-19 pandemic. That makes understanding this research more critical than ever. So what's the actual line between normal worry and a clinical disorder? This slide really nails it. You see, adaptive anxiety is totally normal. It's a survival tool. But maladaptive or pathological anxiety, that's when the system goes off the rails. It becomes dysregulated, it's persistent, it's out of proportion, and it's debilitating. The real problem here is a fundamental loss of regulation. And that brings us to a major issue in modern psychiatry. For a long time, the way we've diagnosed anxiety has been pretty disconnected from what's actually happening in the brain. But thankfully, that's starting to change. For decades, we've used what's called the DSM-5 model. It's basically a checklist of symptoms. But the problem with that? It throws incredibly different people into the same bucket, which leads to these one-size-fits-all treatments that often don't work. The huge paradigm shift we're seeing is a move towards a precision model, like the NIH's ARTIST-C framework, which tries to identify specific, circuit-based biotypes. The goal? To finally enable targeted, effective treatments. Now, the RDoC framework organizes brain function into a few different domains. For this explainer, we're going to focus on the one that's absolutely central to anxiety, the negative valence systems. This is basically the collection of brain circuits that processes anything aversive or threatening. So let's take a closer look at this system. You can think of it as the brain's core machinery for spotting and reacting to danger. But it's in its complexity that the real story of pathological anxiety begins to unfold. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. The negative valence system isn't just one single thing. This research shows that it's made up of at least 3 distinct but connected circuits, and each one handles a different type of threat: acute, potential, and sustained. When any one of these gets dysregulated, it can lead to a completely different flavor of anxiety. Now we're going to really dissect each of these 3 circuits. We'll look at how each one is supposed to work in its normal, healthy role, and then we'll explore what happens, how it breaks down to cause clinical problems. First up, we have the acute threat circuit. The easiest way to think about this one is as the fear response. Functionally, this thing is built for speed. It's a rapid, reflexive system. A threat comes in, hits the thalamus, and takes a super fast highway straight to the amygdala. This triggers that classic freeze-or-flight response long before your conscious brain even knows what's happening. It's all about survival. But what happens when this circuit goes into overdrive? Well, the pathology here is all about hyperreactivity. The amygdala and insula start firing way too easily, which leads to excessive reactions. This can cause things like fear generalization, where harmless things become triggers, and extinction deficits, where the brain just can't learn that a threat is gone. Clinically, this is the classic profile you see in panic disorder and specific phobias. Okay, let's move on to the second circuit, potential threat. This one is dealing with something else entirely. Not immediate danger, but uncertain, ambiguous, maybe far-off threats. The key player here is a little region called the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis, or BNST. And look at these graphs. They tell the whole story. While the amygdala gives you that sharp, immediate, phasic fear response, the BNST produces a much more sustained, long-lasting state of anxiety and vigilance. So when this potential threat circuit gets dysregulated, it creates an intolerance of uncertainty. The brain basically gets rewired to see danger in every shadow, in every bit of ambiguity. This leads to a negative interpretation bias and a tendency to overestimate bad outcomes. This constant low-level simmering of what if is the absolute hallmark of generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD. And finally, we've got the sustained threat circuit. Its main job is attentional control, especially when you're under stress for a long time. In a healthy brain, cortical regions like the prefrontal cortex provide what we call top-down regulation. They filter out all the emotional noise so you can stay focused on your goals, even under pressure. You can think of it as the brain's executive manager.
So pathology in this circuit is really a failure of that top-down control. It's like the brake pedal just stops working. Emotional signals from those deeper regions, like the amygdala, just surge upwards and completely hijack your attention. This creates a bias towards threat and drains your executive control, leading to a state of chronic stress and that feeling of uncontrollable worry.
So we've gone through 3 pretty distinct circuits, each with its own job and its own unique way of failing. Let's pull all of this together into a clear take-home message. This table really sums it all up perfectly. For the acute threat circuit, the amygdala is the key node, the dysfunction is hyperreactivity, and that leads to panic and phobias. For potential threat, the key node is the BNST, the dysfunction is intolerance to uncertainty, which gives you GAD. And for the sustained threat circuit, the key nodes are the MPFC and DACC, the dysfunction is impaired attentional control, leading to chronic stress. This circuit-based view is really the heart of this research.
And that brings us to the most crucial point. Pathological anxiety is not one thing. It isn't some singular defect in the brain. It is a whole collection of distinct disorders that come from the dysregulation of very specific functional brain circuits. Understanding exactly which circuit is affected in a person, well, that's the future of how we're going to diagnose and treat these incredibly debilitating conditions.